The gate to the shuttered Astra City Zoological Gardens sagged on one hinge, its iron bars furred with ivy and rust. I pushed it open just wide enough to slip through, the screech of metal echoing down pathways choked with wind-blown leaves. A faint drizzle hung in the air, dotting my notebook, and the smell of wet concrete and mold rose from the cracked sidewalks. Night was settling, but the clouded moon still leaked enough pewter light for me to follow. The map I had drawn from memory. 5 years had passed since the bankruptcy auction had scattered the living occupants, but rumors persisted that something was still breathing behind the reinforced glass of Pavilion 9. I was not the first to trespass. Every month or two a photo surfaced on obscure forums, always blurry, always too dark, showing a vague handprint or the outline of a muzzle, evaporating from inside a fogged pane. The images were accompanied by threads titled Ghost Zoo, Invisible Menagerie, or simply, What is that? I collected these fragments, the way birdwatchers collected feathers, and tonight I meant to see the source. Official documents claimed all enclosures were empty. The existing species had been relocated or euthanized, but the nightly security patrol had been canceled last spring, and the power to Pavilion 9 still hummed on the grid. That was all the invitation I needed. The pathway veered left into the heart of the rainforest exhibit, where plastic vines dangled like forgotten party streamers. My boots splashed through black puddles reflecting pale sky. Each enclosure was fronted with thick museum-grade glass, most panes cracked but unbroken. Inside, the artificial habitats were skeletal, a lone branch, a torn hammock, synthetic rocks scattered like forgotten toys. I paused before the former sloth habitat, half expecting the familiar slow blink of brown eyes, but the branch was bare. My breath misted the partition, and I wiped it away with a sleeve, suddenly aware of how quiet everything was. No parrots, no insects, not even the soft ticking of water pumps that once simulated Amazonian rain. Then I heard something tap, 3 deliberate knocks from deeper inside Pavilion 9. They landed in my chest like a second heartbeat. I forced myself to keep moving, fingers tight around the flashlight handle inside my coat pocket. The flashlight remained off. If there were motion-activated cameras still functioning, the darkness would be my ally. The drizzle outside was turning to steady rain, and I realized that the interior glass was unusually warm, as though climate controls were still active. The power bills must have been astronomical, but perhaps they were automatically routed, unnoticed, among the city's bureaucratic expenses. A door marked Staff Only stood ajar. Beyond it, the ceiling lights flickered weakly. Yellow tape, once taut, drooped across the corridor like wilted caution. As I entered, a wave of humid air wrapped around me, smelling of soil and something faintly sweet, like ripe pears left to rot. I removed a thermal camera from my bag. Not the top-of-the-line model, only what a freelance science journalist could afford. The screen glowed dull blue, registering the walls at room temperature. I swept it across the corridor. Nothing. Still, I sensed movement in the periphery, as though the air itself rearranged. The tap came again, louder, right ahead. I approached. Enclosure 9B. A 30-foot glass box once home to a pair of white-cheeked gibbons. According to my notes, the primates had been transferred to a sanctuary in Sumatra. Now the habitat was empty of vines, feeders, everything except a perfect oval of fog on the inside of the glass, exactly at my eye level. I stared at it, and it slowly shrank, the water droplets coalescing, running downward as if someone exhaled mere seconds earlier. I raised my palm, lining it opposite the oval. Before the glass cleared entirely, a second oval blossomed beside the first, then a third, forming a rough triangle. I stumbled back, throat tightening with exhilaration and fear. "Hello?" My voice sounded small, childish. No answer. I waited, heart galloping. The thermal camera showed nothing but blue. I tapped the glass twice with a knuckle. 2 taps answered from within. The shape of a handprint, no larger than mine, bloomed where I had knocked, but there was no smudge or streak, only condensation. Whatever was inside had no oil on its skin, no residue. It was the breath that betrayed it. I thought of the rumors, secret research into refractive camouflage, military applications, animals genetically modified to bend light like liquid crystal. 5 years ago, whispers had circulated that Astra City's corporate sponsor, Synergetics Biolabs, kept a private wing beneath the public zoo. When the zoo folded, Synergetics vanished overnight, claims boxed in non-disclosure agreements. Town officials called it conspiracy theory, yet here was evidence. Breathing, knocking from something my eyes could not catch. My phone vibrated. A text, "Are you inside?" It was Mara, my sister. 12 minutes earlier, she had dropped me off 2 blocks away, promising to circle until I returned. I texted back, "I'm okay. Stay near." She replied with a single skull emoji, equal parts humor and scolding. I pocketed the phone and turned toward the map. The private wing, if it existed, should be accessible through the maintenance hatch behind the former reptile lab. I walked in that direction, pausing at each exhibit. Some showed only faint hazes of moisture, like sighs against cold windows. Others remained perfectly clear. I began cataloging. Exhibit 8C, no fog. 8D, 2 small exhalations low to the ground. 8E, large breath at 6 feet high. Sizes varied. Some corresponded to a cat, others a leopard, perhaps even a bear. At Exhibit 10A, I found something different. The entire inside surface was opaque with wet fog, pulsing outward in rhythmic bursts, the tempo of a giant lung. Yet no silhouette appeared, no distorted glass, gradually clearing, then fogging again. The thing inside must be resting inches from the partition, invisible, the heat of its body warming the pain enough to create ceaseless dew. I felt a sudden tenderness, as if standing near a sleeping behemoth that, despite its size, did not know I watched. For a moment my fear softened into wonder. A metallic clang snapped me back. Somewhere behind, a latch banged open. I spun, aiming my dim flashlight down the corridor. Is someone there? Footsteps scuffed. I clicked the beam, revealing only dust dancing in the air. Then, faintly, I thought I saw a ripple like warm air over asphalt move across the hallway and disappear. My skin prickled. Heat signatures should have revealed it, unless whatever it was emitted no thermal radiation. The thought felt impossible, yet I had already accepted invisibility. Why not temperature masking as well? I forced myself onward. The reptile lab's door was locked, but a missing panel left a ragged hole beneath the handle. I squeezed through, scraping my jacket. Inside, lab benches were strewn with toppled beakers, their contents long since evaporated. Microscopes sat like blind sentries under dust. At the far end, a stainless steel floor grate glinted under emergency lighting, powered by a dying battery. I knelt and tugged. The grate lifted free with surprising ease. A ladder descended into darkness. My phone buzzed again. "Call me now," the text demanded. I ignored it, not out of bravado, but necessity. I needed both hands to climb. The ladder rungs were slick. I descended slowly, each step echoing up the metal shaft. After 15 feet, my boot touched concrete. The flashlight revealed a service corridor wide enough for a gurney. Walls were painted seafoam green, the color of old hospitals. Every 20 feet, red stenciled arrows pointed, animal lab/bio and containment. The corridor ended at a pressure door propped open with a plastic crate. Half of the overhead fixtures still functioned, bathing the antechamber in cold fluorescence. On the walls hung charts illustrating nervous systems, but the shapes were wrong. Elongated limbs, triple-jointed spines, skulls lacking eyes, notes scribbled in the margins. Subject 47, 75% refractive efficiency. Subject 47B. Thermo-null, optical phase shift stable less than 400 nm. The jargon confirmed my hunch. These were engineered organisms designed to vanish. Past another door lay a room of glass cylinders, each big enough for a large dog. Most tubes were empty, stained by mineral deposits, but one cylinder held liquid that shimmered, even in stillness. Something within rotated, a lazy pirouette. I leaned close, squinting for detail, and recoiled. The fluid distended, forming the suggestion of a face. No features, just a concavity where eye sockets might be. The shape pressed against the glass, then dissolved back into fluid. My breath lodged in my throat. It had seen me. A crash upstairs, followed by Mara's voice calling my name, made me flinch. Echoes brought her plea down the shaft. "Lena, where are you?" I cursed silently. She must have entered searching for me. If something prowled up there, she was exposed. I sprinted to the ladder, climbing 2 rungs at a time, flashlight clenched in teeth. Halfway up, a blast of air rushed down, smelling of wet fur. Footfalls pounded overhead. "Mara!" I shouted, voice reverberating. I emerged into the reptile lab and found her standing amid shattered glass, one hand pressed to a bleeding cut on her cheek. "I heard you scream," she said, shaking. "Then something barreled past me. I look." We both turned toward the corridor. A series of wet crescents appeared on the glass of Exhibit 8E, leading like breadcrumbs toward Pavilion 9's exit. Whatever had charged Mara was heading outside, perhaps driven by panic at our intrusion. She stared at the fog prints and whispered, "What are they?" I didn't have soothing lies prepared. "Genetic experiments," I answered. "They bend light to hide. They're still alive." She swallowed hard, eyes reflecting terror and fascination. "Then we need to leave." "Not yet," I said before I could stop myself. "This could change everything. Proof of illegal research, animal rights violations. It's a story that matters." Even as I spoke, I felt the selfishness of the impulse, weighing her safety against my ambition. Yet the compulsion to expose the truth anchored my feet. Mara studied my face, recognizing the stubborn streak we shared. She exhaled through her nose. 5 minutes, she conceded. "Then we go, and if anything touches me again, I will drag you out by your hair." We proceeded in tandem, her brandishing a taser, me holding the flashlight and camera. The corridor leading back toward the exit looked clear, but at Exhibit 10A, the sleeping giant, the pulses had ceased. The pain was dry. I felt simultaneously relieved and melancholic, as if a whale song had ended mid-note. I shot quick video of the glass, narrating details. A sudden electric crack shook the air. The entire pavilion lights blazed at full power, transformers groaning. Simultaneously, industrial fans kicked on, venting warm, moist air. The temperature dropped sharply, and before our eyes, every glass pane whitened as invisible lungs exhaled. Dozens, maybe 100 breaths bloomed at once, some small as kittens, others vast. The pavilion transformed into a constellation of fog, mapping an unseen ecosystem. A chorus of clicks, chirps, growls, and hisses reverberated, as though powered ventilation had signaled feeding time. Mara grabbed my sleeve. "The fans, they're cooling the air, so their breath condenses more." Her voice trembled, but wonder threaded through it. "We can see them, Lena." Indeed, outlines emerged. Not full shapes, but distortions where condensation hung longer, revealing curvatures. A serpentine coil inside one enclosure, the arch of a hoof in another. A pair of wing-like structures fluttered against the roof, shedding mist as quickly as it formed. We stood transfixed, 2 intruders glimpsing the private dance of secrecy made visible by simple physics. Then the alarm started. Red strobes flashed, and metallic shutters began descending over exits. The pavilion was entering automatic lockdown. Whether triggered by power restoration or by sensors detecting our motion, it didn't matter. We had maybe 60 seconds before being sealed inside with the unseen menagerie. We ran. Footfalls echoed, ours and others. Shapes breached enclosures, slithering or leaping through gaps where plexiglass once framed informational placards. Fans gusted, making breath clouds swirl like ghosts. I glimpsed a set of condensation footprints sprint across the tile ahead, 2 hind limbs, 1 front limb missing, perhaps amputated or vestigial. The sight made my stomach flip even as I kept running. The main exit lay 20 yards ahead, shutter halfway down. I dove, sliding beneath, camera smashing painfully against my ribs, but I cleared. Mara wasn't as fast. The shutter scraped her backpack, pinning her. I yanked, and she wriggled free, straps tearing. We landed on the rainy zoo concourse outside, gasping. The shutter slammed shut behind us, muffling the cacophony within. For a long moment we lay on wet concrete, rain needling our faces. Then something banged from inside, a heavy body colliding with metal. The shutter buckled inward but held. I pictured a rhinoceros-sized outline, invisible but breathing against the barrier, its frustration misting on the metal surface. "Time to go," Mara said, voice ragged. We staggered toward the front gate, but I hesitated at a service kiosk where once tourists bought cotton candy shaped like flamingos. Lighting from the pavilion backlit the condensation pattern still lingering on our side of the shutter, 2 prints, like palms pressed in farewell. I snapped a photo before Mara tugged me onward. We reached her car, doors already unlocked, engine idling from remote start. Inside, we shivered not from cold, but adrenaline. My phone buzzed with low battery notification. The thermal camera was dead, but the DSLR had survived. I reviewed footage on the small screen. There, breath clouds blooming across glass. The moment lights flared, outlines flickering as mist traced their forms. It was grainy, imperfect, but undeniable. Mara glanced over. She wore an odd smile, the kind birthed from near catastrophe. "What happens now?" I flexed frozen fingers. "We publish. The world sees. And maybe, just maybe, someone figures out how to care for them properly. And if the company comes after us?" I thought of the locked room beneath, the fluid cylinder still occupied, the charts of impossible anatomy. They already abandoned their obligations. We owe them nothing. Rain drummed the windshield as she pulled onto the street. In the rearview mirror, I saw the pavilion lights flicker, winking like a dying lighthouse. Then, darkness. Yet I knew, within that gloom, hearts still beat. Invisible but undeniable, their breath painting secret signatures against glass walls. 2 nights later, after we had rested little and argued much, I uploaded the footage and stills to every platform that would host it. Science blogs, mainstream feeds, activist channels. I wrote an accompanying article titled, "The Creatures You Can Only See When They Breathe." It chronicled our journey, the condensation phenomenon, the clandestine labs, the injuries Mara sustained, the ethical vacuum left by synergetics. The story went viral in hours. Experts weighed in. Skeptics called it CGI, but animal welfare organizations demanded inspections. City officials scheduled an emergency hearing. By dawn, a small army of news vans clogged Astor Street outside the zoo. Under public pressure, the municipality cut the pavilion's power, deactivating the refrigeration fans that had made breath visible. The animals, still unseen, grew silent behind the reinforced doors. Some commentators asked if we had doomed them to renewed invisibility, away from the world's compassion. Others insisted containment was vital until safety protocols existed. I found myself in the middle, arguing both for transparency and for care. Meanwhile, technicians searched for ways to feed inhabitants they could not glimpse. Infrared failed, ultrasonic mapping produced only chaotic blurs. Then one caretaker, remembering the condensation trick, suggested chilled glass feeding panels through which breath could be tracked. Soon, caretakers worked in refrigerated suits, following breath prints to place food near muzzles and mandibles they could not see. The zoo, once abandoned, became a pioneer facility not in spectacle but in humility. Humans attending creatures' evolution never intended. whose existence we had forced. I visited weekly, recording progress. The animals began to recognize routine. Breath clouds greeted staff as they approached. Nocturnal specimens brushed glass when certain caretakers spoke. For viewers behind safety barriers, the pavilion resembled a planetarium of living nebulae, every exhalation a starburst. Children pressed hands to the partition and giggled when an unseen trunk or paw left a matching condensation print. One afternoon, while I took notes near Exhibit 10A, a fog oval appeared, larger than any prior, followed by a streak as something slid down to rest opposite me. Through the chill, I said, "We're trying, to do better." My breath etched a pale cloud. On the glass, a new shape formed, an arc, like the curve of a smile or perhaps simply the contour of whatever face it possessed. It lingered, then faded. Mara, standing beside me, slipped her hand into mine. "Think they'll forgive us?" she asked. "I hope they never need to," I replied. "I hope we learn before there's anything to forgive." We watched until the glass dried, the invisible creature retreating into warmth. Around us, the pavilion thrummed with cautious life fans whispering. Lights muted, staff speaking softly, an ecosystem of care born from a night of trespass, terror, and revelation. And though my article had launched 1,000 debates, no words could match that silent communion, two species acknowledging each other through the fragile, fleeting language of breath on glass.